अब हमने ये जो ब्लैक ऊपर झिल्ली होती है ये छुरी की मदद से हम रिमूव करेंगे। तो 2 मिनट मिक्स करने के बाद ये थोड़ी-थोड़ी नरम हो जाती है, फिर आप इसको आसानी के साथ रिमूव कर सकते हैं। ये देखें, तो इस तरह आपने हल्के हाथ से छुरी चलानी है। देखें अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह आसानी के साथ ये साफ हो रही है। इसी तरह हमने तमाम पीसेस पे जहाँ-जहाँ ये ब्लैक झिल्ली लगी हुई है ये हमने साफ कर लेनी। जी, तो ये देखिए अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह हमने छुरी की मदद से जो झिल्ली थी वो साफ कर दी है। अभी इसको दोबारा अच्छी तरह मिक्स कर लेंगे और उसके बाद हम इसको तकरीबन 5 मिनट के लिए रख देंगे। जी दोस्तों, अभी हमें 5 मिनट हो चुके हैं। तो 5 मिनट के बाद अभी हमने इसका नेक्स्ट प्रोसेस करना है। तो अभी देख लें कि इसका कलर आपको थोड़ा-थोड़ा व्हाइट लग रहा होगा। जो अभी इसमें ब्लड था वो सारा तकरीबन अभी निकल चुका है। ये देखें। तो अभी वीडियो के लास्ट में मैं आपको एक बहुत ज़बरदस्त टिप बताने वाला हूँ। तो वीडियो को आपने लास्ट तक देखना है। तो अभी हमने क्या करना है कि इसमें हमने पानी ऐड कर देना है तकरीबन 2 गिलास। ये देखें इस तरह। तो पानी ऐड करने के बाद इसको हमने थोड़ा-सा ऐसे हिला लेना है। तो थोड़ा-सा हिला लेने के बाद ये देखें अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह कैसे ही अभी थोड़ा-सा पानी ऐड किया है तो ये साफ होने लग गई है। अभी हमने इसको अलहदा जो साफ पानी है टूटी के नीचे, उसके नीचे हमने इसको अच्छी तरह साफ कर लेना है और धो लेना है। जी, तो पानी के साथ अच्छी तरह धोने के बाद हमने एक छाननी आप ले लें, इस तरह की जो प्लास्टिक की हो या लोहे की हो, उसमें हमने ये तमाम फिश रखनी है। तो ये देखिए अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह फिश हमारी बिल्कुल ज़बरदस्त किस्म की साफ हो चुकी है, स्मेल भी इसकी अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह खत्म हो चुकी है। तो लास्ट में टिप यही है कि आपने फिश को मसाला लगाने से पहले इसको बिल्कुल ड्राई कर लेना है। 15 से 20 मिनट आप इस तरह रखें तो इसका पानी बिल्कुल खत्म हो जाएगा, तब आपने इसके ऊपर मसाला ऐड करना है। तो जिन लोगों को हमारी ये वीडियो पसंद आई है तो वो हमारे चैनल को लाजमी सब्सक्राइब कर दें। अगली वीडियो तक अहमद अली को दीजिए इजाज़त। अपना बहुत सारा ख्याल रखिएगा। अल्लाह।
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अस्सलाम वालेकुम व्यूअर, मैं हूं शेफ रिजवान और आप देख रहे हैं बाबा फूड RRC। कमाल की रेसिपी, फिश की रेसिपी, मछली फ्राई की रेसिपी टेस्टफुल किस तरीके से बनेगी, किन चीजों का ख्याल करेंगे टेस्टफुल बनेगी, किन चीजों की मिस्टेक करेंगे टेस्टफुल नहीं बनेगी, मुकम्मल गाइड करने वाला हूं। क्योंकि आपको पता है कि फिश का सीजन आ गया है, मार्केट में स्टॉल लगने शुरू हो गए हैं, घरों में बनने शुरू हो गई हैं। आप फिश को किस तरीके से तैयार करेंगे, टेस्टफुल क्रिस्पी किस तरीके से बनेगी, अंदर से वो आप पानी पानी जा रह जाता है, नरम होती है, अंदर से खुश्क होनी चाहिए, फिर फिश आपकी अच्छी बनेगी। ये तमाम चीजें आज हम डिस्कस करेंगे, तवज्जो से देखिएगा। ये मेरे पास 1.5 kg 1500 ग्राम साफी वजन है, रहू जिसे आप लोग कहते हैं, रहू का मैं लेके आया। टमरा भी कहा जाता है, छाली मच्छी भी कहा जाता है, चाने वाली मच्छी भी कहा जाता है, मुख्तलिफ नाम इसके मार्केट में है। और इसको मैंने क्या किया, खाल समेत इसको साफ करा लिया, जो इसके ऊपर जिल्द होती है उसको भी रिमूव करा लिया, ऊपर से छिलके जो चाने होते हैं वो तो साफ करवाए ही करवाए, मैंने इसकी स्किन भी साफ करवा ली। इस तरीके से आ गई रहू, डमरा, चाने वाली मच्छी, इस तरीके से ठीक हो गया। ये साफी वजन 1.5 किलो बना। पूरी मछली का वजन जो था वो 2 kg था। इस टाइम पे आगे हमने क्या करना है, यहाँ पे एक मैंने पैन ले लिया, इसके अंदर मैंने 1.5 टेबल स्पून खुश्क धनिया शामिल कर दिया, 1 टेबल स्पून भर के जीरा शामिल कर दिया, अजवैन 1 टेबल स्पून शामिल कर दिया। ये इसको हम थोड़ा सा रोस्ट करेंगे। रोस्ट हम इसलिए करेंगे कि ताकि जो इनकी खुशबू है वो अच्छे तरीके से आ जाए। मिसालों की रोस्ट करने से खुशबू 4 गुना ज्यादा बढ़ जाती है। इसको हम 2 मिनट मीडियम फ्लेम पे रोस्ट करेंगे, उसके बाद आपसे मिलते हैं। अच्छे तरीके से मिसाले हमारे रोस्ट हो गए, फ्लेम को बंद कर देंगे। अब इसको हम यहाँ पे इसे मिक्सी के जार में डाल देंगे। हमने इनको दरदरा सा मोटा मोटा कूटना है, बारीक नहीं कूटना, ठीक हो गया। अगर आप चाहते हैं कि आपकी फिश का रिजल्ट अच्छा है तो मोटा कूटना है मिसाला। इसको हम दरदरा सा कूट लेते हैं, ग्राइंड कर लेते हैं। देखें जी, हमने यहाँ पे एक बॉल ले लिया, फिश को इसमें इस तरीके से शिफ्ट करने लगे हैं। मिसाले को हमने दरदरा मोटा इसलिए फिश पे लगाया जाता है, इसलिए हमने इसको इस तरीके से दरदरा बनाया ताकि लुक वाइज भी अच्छा लगे और खुशबू भी बरकरार रहे मिसाले
Good
की।
evening, everybody. I'll
बहुत
probably
ज्यादा
just give a
बारीक बना के
minute or so, or maybe a couple of minutes before we start the session. Looks like a lot of people are just jumping into the call. So just for the benefit of all of those who are joining in late, maybe we'll just give them a couple of minutes and then we'll start the session.
मत लगाइएगा, ठीक हो गया। इसके अंदर शामिल करेंगे हाफ टेबल स्पून नमक या अपने टेस्ट के हिसाब से शामिल करेंगे, लेमन का जूस या फिश आगे इस तरीके से एक और बॉल पे शिफ्ट कर लेते हैं इस तरीके से और हाथों को अच्छे तरीके से वॉश कर लें। उसके बाद में आपसे इस टाइम पे आके हम इसको ऊपर से लैमिनेशन लगा देंगे पेपर इस तरीके से। इसको हमने मैरिनेट करना है और इसकी मैरिनेशन के टाइम ये जो हम टेस्ट बना रहे हैं इस फिश का, हमने मैरिनेशन के अंदर मैदे का इस्तेमाल, बेसन का इस्तेमाल फिलहाल नहीं किया, ठीक हो गया। गल समझ आ रही है? इसको अच्छे तरीके
So
से हम
good
मैरिनेट
evening,
करेंगे।
everybody. I
अगर आप
think
चाहते हैं कि आपकी फिश
we've
टेस्ट
waited enough.
मजेदार
While people may join in, I think we'll just go ahead.
ज्यादा पूरी रात
Good evening. My name is Funny.
सुबह हम आपको इसको बताएंगे किस प्रोसेस
Today
से
we're going to be talking a little bit about arrays and collections. Basically, we'll focus on arrays. I think keeping in mind that the session is structured around those who are going to be educators and will be teaching the lower grade school kids. So we'll just try and spend a little bit of a time in focusing on arrays because this is an important topic and it can be used quite well in coding and will be very useful for anybody who is actually getting into writing good code. All right. So we've covered in the last few sessions, we've covered all the fundamentals. We've talked a lot about operators. We've talked about loops. We've talked a lot about functions yesterday. And I think we tried to see as many examples as we could by creating some simple functions so that you could start working with block code. And as a natural consequence, and I think I touched a little upon arrays without explicitly discussing about arrays yesterday in one of the examples. So it's my job to obviously go back and explain to you so that I know I mentioned that to you yesterday as well, that we will take an example and use a function. While we used functions with loops, we used also a function with embedded array in it. So obviously some of you may have been confused. Again, I thank you very much for your feedback. We got some overwhelming response and I really appreciate you taking your time out to give us that feedback. And your feedback is obviously helping us improve these workshops every day. And I'm pretty sure that you would have observed that the sessions are definitely getting better as we go every day. This is all thanks to you for the feedback that you're giving us. And be rest assured that the feedback that you are giving us, we are paying attention to it. And I know a lot of questions that had come on the sessions were revolving around, how do I redeem my code? How do I get the certificate? So I think today also I will probably try and spend 2-3 minutes at the end answering some of those questions, and I'll then leave it to if Navdeep is able to join this session from Microsoft. She probably will be able to answer some of your questions. Otherwise, most of your feedback has been taken into consideration, and I think thanks to you all, I think some of the feedback that I have received yesterday, yes, definitely I will go through one of the examples that we had discussed yesterday, so that if somebody had a question on arrays, we could happily answer those. But we'll stick to arrays today, and I posted on the chat box, and I'm also going to put broadcast it on the Q&A, the redeeming code um, for today's session, so that people should not be concerned and confused with yesterday's. I know I had a lot of people writing saying that they could not get the redeem code for yesterday for whatever reason. I will post that as well. But what I have now posted on the Q&A box right now for you is today's redeem code feedback. And I'm also, if you go back, if you look at it carefully, the just look at that. The recordings also are made available for you. Okay, so please try and see that. If you're unable to, for whatever reason, just give me a second and I will get that out of the way for you, so that any of you who's any of you, just give me a second. Because we've received a lot of folks who wanted access to the what do you call the recordings. So please find the OneDrive link that I put up in the Q&A box here. Please copy it. The Q&A window once again has the link for all the recordings of the sessions that I have taken at least. Please find that so that you have not confused. I will keep updating them every day so that all the recordings for the remaining days also will be available in the same folder. So I think pretty much those are the majority of the concerns that folks had, and will not waste any more time, and we'll proceed with to go ahead and start the session. Okay, so we've talked about arrays yesterday very, very briefly. So what we'll do is we'll discuss in length about arrays. We'll talk a little bit about, let's say, in terms of what is a collection. These are the two important points for today's discussion. And then we'll go through some block code using the simple tools that we have available to us. And so that from make code point of view, you're able to leverage arrays systematically. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing today. And we will, so, a lot of times I've seen in the world of programming, a lot of students get paranoid with arrays, and I don't know why. They do get paranoid with functions as well, but they also do get paranoid with arrays. And I've seen this at not only at a school level, but at a college level as well. And okay, I understand when you get into complex arrays, it can get a little confusing, but to a large extent, simple arrays, it should not be a complicated topic. And it should be a very easy one for students to enjoy, right? But for some reason, I found that the topic is always made very complicated for students. Somehow, this, to a large extent, kids refrain from working with arrays. They first reaction you get is arrays, and they're like, oh my god, it's a tough topic, right? But actually, it does not. It's one of the easiest topics in as far as I am concerned, and I'll tell you why also. Any kind of program, no matter what you write, if you understand arrays, yes, you will use them quite often. There are advantages, there are disadvantages, but we'll come to it. Okay, so arrays actually is just, if you visualize it, right? Just visualize it as a, a table of or a container full of similar kind of items. Let's say it's a container that has laid out like a string of beads in an order. Like let's say you have a string of beads, and each bead has a different color, but they're all beads. Or you have a string of flowers. They could be all different types of flowers, but they're all flowers, right? And they all hold a position. They are one after the other. When you go to a shop, when you go to a shop and you buy a string of pearls, you normally define what you want, right? You tell the shopkeeper that I'm looking for pearls of a particular size, let's say, or you tell them your budget, right? Similarly, when you go to buy flowers, let's say you're trying to buy a string of flowers, you tell them that this is the length I'm looking for, and I'm looking for flowers, right? Similarly, an array, you can imagine it as a collection of similar types of data. Okay, maybe, or we call it data variables. Okay. Now, these arrays can be integers, they can be strings, they could be float. You could have any kind, but they all need to be of the same type. And when the code recognizes your declaration that you want to create an array, okay, once you declare and say this is the size of my array, I want 10 flowers in my string, you cannot change it. All right, let's say you have 10. If you say you want to have 10, all right, you have 10, you want to increase it, you got to explicitly again go and tell the shopkeeper, oh wait a second, I'm looking for a string that has 25 flowers, not 10, I'm sorry, right? But you cannot say I want 10 and then try to stuff in 25 flowers into that goblet. All right, so the simplest way to understand an array is a container that is full of similar types of data variables stacked in such a way that the computer understands it as one block of information that it will all save together in one place of its memory. This is all that you need to understand initially. Okay. Now, what I have given here at the last is a simple example. Okay, array is equal to just an example for you to visualize that an array can be just like a string of numbers 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60. All right, so this is the simplest definition of an array. And now there is another dimension for discussion here. It's called collections. Okay, now the difference between an array and a container or a collection is that a collection is a container essentially that can have similar type of objects and different types of, let's say, data variables. Okay, that's a very simple way of differentiating. And the collection, just unlike arrays, you can dynamically change the size of the collection. Okay, so there are certain advantages, certain disadvantages with such a way of working with, you can say collection is also a type of an array. Okay, you can look at it that way so that just for your understanding, collections are different, arrays are different, but just for you, because we're comparing two things, let's try to make it comparable. Okay, so a collection can be a set of pictures, maps, it could be letters, data of different natures. So that's what collections is all about. This is, I think, fundamental for your understanding of collections. Even though we are not going to be covering collections in depth here, those of you who are probably teaching Java in your schools, you must be knowing this already, that you will have to explicitly differentiate between an array and a collection. And collections, when you're using a collection, you use it for different reasons. But there is a pro and con. We'll come to that at the end of the session as to when and why would somebody not want to use an array and why would not you want to use a collection. There is a trade-off. There's a trade-off, and that trade-off depends on what you're trying to achieve in your code. We'll come to that a little later. Okay. Like I said, collection allows programmers to group multiple items into a common set. So multiple type sets. Okay. So essentially, remember, array was just one single type. Collection is multiple types. Now, if you want to modify this collection, you could do so. Okay. You could perform different operations on these to retrieve and modify the data. Okay, that's also something that you can do just like in arrays. But there is we'll come to the point of performance. Collection has an advantage over arrays when you use it. Okay, arrays are in one way, if you look at it when you write good long code, using collection, you will see that the performance is improved, but the memory management is sacrificed. Okay, so this is one important difference between an array and a collection. Okay, and obviously because of performance increase, your productivity increases. Right, the moment you're saying that, hey, performance of my code is better, it's running faster, it seems to be running more efficiently, obviously that means your operational time comes down, productivity increases, and your user experience tends to improve, right? So there is a trade-off, like I said. But in some cases, let's say in scientific areas, unless you have, obviously you're trying to build this trade-off, which is with respect to having elaborate hardware configuration, and then you're expecting it to do a great performance or a great performance versus, and if you don't have great hardware, what do you do? So, there are some trade-offs, and that you can look at it. And again, like I said, depending on what you're trying to achieve, you will do these trade-offs. Okay. Now, like I said, you can iterate. It can be, like I said, a collection can be a set of non-homogeneous data, and then you have to look at it from data that could be modified within this container. You could have, within this collection, which is basically a container for you. There are different ways, iterators, that you can use to provide basically ways of accessing this information that is there in this collection in a sequential manner. Okay. You have to always traverse through the elements of these collections to fetch the data or make any modifications to that data. Okay, so you have to make it in a sequential way. So don't worry about this. I think we'll come and I'll explain to you in detail an example, and then you will understand this aspect much better, and you will probably have a better understanding of collections. Okay, like I said, in programming, you can use multiple ways to modify the data stored in a collection, just like how you could do so in especially the data that is stored in an array. Also, you could modify the data. Okay, and but there is a limitation. Okay, not every collection can be modified, and there is always certain kinds of restrictions that apply. We'll get to that. Because when you try modifying the elements through iteration, it does throw out an error in the program, and you will see that because the way the data is stored and managed, there are certain constraints, and we will come to that. And you cannot obviously add or remove elements while iterating through these collections because of certain issues. We will come to that as well. Okay. Now, arrays, for your point of view, in today's discussion, if you can imagine a string, like I said, a string of words. Let's take this example of string of numbers here. Okay, we have a string of numbers, and when we have a string of numbers, each number within that array, imagine it as laid out sequentially back to back. Okay, that is in tandem, that is in a sequential order. Let's say 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 are laid out in an order in the way you're seeing it on the screen. The important thing about arrays for you to remember is that when it comes to the position of this number, whether it's a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, remember the way the array is numbered, or it's called the array indices. It starts with a 0. This is important for you to remember. Okay. So in this case, you have 6 elements. The array has 6 elements. So that means the length of your array is 6, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Okay. But remember this, always the first number is sitting on a index called 0. Numbering starts with 0. This is all that you need to remember in arrays. If you know this concept, your concept of arrays is pretty clear, pretty much clear. And then when you use arrays in your programming, and if you keep this in mind and work, it's very easy to work with arrays. So at least these are single dimensional arrays. I don't want to confuse you with too much information right now, but we'll just cover the basics. Single dimensional height. This is a, let's call it a unidimensional array. It's called an array. Okay. And like I said, array has a set number of data of same type. You got to declare how many numbers or how many data can be provisioned into that index, into that array. Index, that means the array index will start with the count of 0 from the first box, not from, it won't be 1, but it will be starting at a 0. And the cool thing is, why the arrays become even more interesting is because you can assign one variable multiple values from these arrays. Okay, so that's why arrays become very interesting. Normally, when we, in the last few days, if you remember, every time we created a variable, we gave it only one value, right? Here, the cool part is you can assign one variable to different elements within the array itself. Okay, and you will understand that as well. When we get into the live example, you will start appreciating and understanding all of what I'm just telling you very easily. Those of you who already know arrays as teachers, I'm pretty sure this is something that you've already taught well enough in your classes. But from a block code perspective, if you have not done it, this could be a great experience for you people to play around with arrays using MakeCode. And if you're already using MakeCode in your classes and you already know arrays, just try to maybe think about how you can make MakeCode and arcade even more eventful for your children. I'm not saying make complex problem statements, but you got to stage it one after the other, so there is better appreciation for MakeCode or block codes for school children. I've seen a lot of students who are very excited to do a lot of crazy things, but they stop when it comes to doing some certain kinds of things. That's because they fail to understand the application of arrays. And I've seen this predominantly in a lot of schools. I've also seen this in Imagine Cup. I have seen this in cases where actually when students are trying to build interesting code, even in Python or even in Java, they stop at actually building good code. They try to work with very simple examples that they have taken. They're not encouraged to actually think logically and write code. Okay, so I think there has to be some way to make this fun for the children. And I think that starts with you, obviously, in making this even more eventful for your children so that they are guided to think. And I think the thought process, like I said, getting people to think using pseudocode is very, very critical. A flowchart is a natural sequence before you actually start building the code. But a lot of times I have seen students stop thinking pseudocode, thinking that it's a very basic thing, but it's so critical to their success, especially when they are coming to colleges or taking up jobs. I've realized that they shy away from writing code. They rather work with applications where they don't have to write hard code, like in C or C++, Python or Java coding. I've seen that their affinity towards working with applications is far higher than actual writing programming or code, where there's a little bit of analytics and logical sequencing which needs to be applied. So my strong recommendation is little effort that we have to put in as educators to make it interesting for them and encourage them to write little complex code, because world around children are writing very complex code these days, because block code has made it easy for them. But block code has made it easy, but the way I look at it is the application of the block code still resides with you. You are taught English, but you're not taught, you're not taught to write a novel. So that's the same thing, right? You know block codes are, but then that means you should be entitled to make even more complex code. So it's our job to make it a little interesting. So, like I said, the disadvantages of arrays, you can only store the same type of data, okay, in an array. Now, like I said, you can the indexing starts with 0. That's something that you have to remember. You have to declare the array before you use it, and the size of the array stays fixed. You cannot clutter it with more than what it has been declared for. Okay. Um, so just to quickly summarize, whatever I've told you about arrays applies. The limitations, like I said, whatever, it has to be homogeneous data, same date type of data, variables that can be stored. Um, Arrays are always static, which means that, like I said, you need to declare the size of the array before explicitly, and that will be how the memory works with the array, and all the elements of the array stay put in one part of the memory. Okay, so that's the way arrays are stored. So that's something that you need to remember. Okay? And sometimes it becomes a limitation that the sequential starts with 0, but that's not a real big limitation. People do consider it as a limitation, but I really don't think it is one. Okay. Like I said, how do you declare an array? You give it the array variable. In this case, like let's say we call it an ARR as the array, and you put the brackets and you define, you put a number in that. Okay. Now, the number inside that defines the index position. Okay, when you want to call it. Okay, when you want to call a particular element of an array, you call the name of the array, put the square bracket in your programming. Typically, okay, different programming languages may use the syntax differently, but by and large, it's the same. But the square bracket with the number inside, index is the index field, okay, of the element that you want to access. In this case, it is F. Okay, so this is something that now I don't want to complicate this topic even more than what it should be, but just to give you a glimpse, there is something called a multi-dimensional arrays also. It's a little complex, used for little more complex things. If you look at it from a dimension point of view, arrays can be two-dimensional in nature. So when you declare them, for example, you can declare them as name of array. It's a floating type, and you put a curly bracket 3, 4, let's say. In this case, 3, 4 means there are going to be 3 rows and 4 columns. That's the format Java follows. Okay, so every language could have a different one. It could be called some programming languages. If you say X, 3 and 4, some programming languages will have 3 columns and 4 rows. So you have to know which language you're working on and what's the syntax structure for that particular language for array declaration. Okay, so just keep that in mind, please. So 3, 4 means 3 rows and 4 columns. Basically, you're working like a matrix. So it will have 2 elements as a reference, and it could be, in this case, because remember, the first element always starts with index 0. It will start with x00 and then up row wise. Then it will go to row 2. Then it will go to row 3. 4 columns, and the position of the element that you're storing will reside in that particular box. Okay. So this is a 3 by 4 array. You can have a 3-dimensional array also. So dimensional arrays get even more complex and more complex, but depends on the nature of your application. You don't have to complicate it more than what it is required. But for image processing and face recognition kind of algorithms, yes, multi-dimensional, 2-dimensional arrays are predominantly used, and 3-dimensional are for the larger scientific applications. But most of the time for business scenarios, single arrays are more than sufficient. we won't waste more time on the theory part. We'll directly now start jumping into the coding examples, I think, so that we'll save some time. Yeah. So just this in this example, I think I'll explain all of this in the practicals. I think it is better because it kind of gets boring when we go through all of this. Okay. But I'll come back to all of this maybe. I'll get straight to what do you call the code examples. So it becomes a little more interesting for you to watch also. And then if we have time, we'll try to come back to some of these. Okay. But sorting in an array, you could do something called like, let's say if you have a number, I won't walk through slide by slide on this, but I'll just give you a quick walkthrough on this and we'll jump to the demo quickly. Okay, because we have 2-3 examples that I want to show you with arrays, and then let's play with arrays right after that, after this slide. Okay, so you can sort the elements in an array as well, and that's an important aspect. If you want to do that in any order that you want to, you could actually do it. And if you here is an example, and this is a way you manipulate data in an array, right? So if you want to, for example, you want to sort them in an ascending order, you could do something called a bubble sort. Bubble sort is very simple. The index, let's say 0 item is number 1 here, number 1 is number 5, and your code should look at which is greater. Okay, if let's say in the first time between 1 and 5, 5 is greater, 5 sits in the same place, then you compare 5 and 4. If in this case you keep moving it to the right essentially, right? So your logic will keep telling it, keep moving it to the next box, stay on the right. So you compare it with 4 and 5, and if 5 is larger, you move 5 to the right, 4 takes index position 1, 5 goes to 2, and then you keep doing that sort, and then you keep repeating till you hit a what do you call a sequence, which is something like this. So you hit this. So this is called a bubble sorting mechanism. You could do it in an iterative way. So it depends. It's a very strenuous process. There are easier ways to do it also, and you can figure that out. In block code, you don't even have to write test code. But what I'm trying to tell you is that these can all become interesting projects for children to play with as well. But we will get straight to the demos now. So just give me a second. So now we'll just go to the demo of. Just give me a second while I shift the screen. I move it to the demo screen. So I hope you can see it now. Yeah, I think you should be able to see it. So what I'm going to do now is we'll just take up. Just give me a second. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll take the first project and we'll try and build it around, let's say, let's take the first project. I think we'll just walk through and create a project, which we'll just call it a test array for this time. Okay, and we'll create it. I will create a project for basically calling we're testing an array, right? Okay. So now what we'll do is, like I said yesterday, if you want to create a function, you got to go back and look for functions here. Remember? Similarly, when you're looking for arrays, just below this, you have a whole bunch of arrays. Okay. So the first thing is we're going to, in this case, we're going to declare an array. Okay. So it comes under the order of create. Okay. So it comes under the order of create. And you have many options. We'll come to and read all of these options as we go by. We'll try to use some of these elements of block code. But these blocks, essentially, this one here is what you want to use. So what this is actually doing, this particular block, is actually declaring an array. Okay? and the name of that array. Right now we have not listed it. We will just give it a name. Okay, we'll just call it test. So essentially what we've done now is we have created an array. We've declared it as an array, but we've not by default it's got two elements, right? 0 and 1 indices. Basically it's a two element array for you. Alright? So we can give some random value. We'll assign, we'll initiate it. Okay. So we just initiating some kind of a value. Okay? So I just hope you guys can see it. Yes, you can. So we've initiated it. Now, if we want to make sure that yes, this let's say this array is created and it can show us the numbers. You could just go to basic, just show number, but we don't want a number to be shown, right? We want the array to be shown. It's the contents of the array. Okay. So what we can do is just go here, and what we are actually going to be doing is we are going to be showing at the array. Okay. So there are many ways of doing this, but I'm just going to give you a simple way. Okay. So what we can do is under the read. Okay. Under the read. Basically, because we want to show the array here, right? Right now it's default 0 showing. So you use this under the read category. We are using get value. Okay. And we plug it into this box of variables here. This variable box is now, but our name of our array is not list. See, NAL, it's showing NAN because our name of our array is not list here, right? Remember, we've created an array called test array. So just click here and choose test array. Okay. Now there are no errors. Now, by default, it is showing the first element because guess what? Our index is 0, right? Get value at our index, array index is 0. And remember, we talked about it. The first position of the array is always 0. And since this is 0, it is showing us 6 here. All right. So I think this is the first step for you to get comfortable with arrays. Now, what we can do is we'll do a little bit of the next level. We'll make it a little interesting now. What we can do is we can actually, there are multiple things that we can play around with. Okay. Now, we'll create a variable. Okay. We'll just create a variable. And what we can do is, by the way, you want to increase the size of this array, you can just click plus. Okay. Now let's say we gave it a value of 8. Now, suppose you want to change the value of 8 in this particular, let's say, array. Let's change the value of anything. Okay. So you can now just go and say, we create a variable. Let's say, we have a list. So we just say test set. We create a new variable, or we can just say list. Okay, there are no errors on this because list is already declared as a variable. Okay. Now we can initialize the variable called list, and we'll give it a value called 5. Okay. What we really want to do now is assign this value to one of these elements here. Okay. So what we can do is we can just go to arrays. Now you want to write something, right? We want to modify. So what we can do is we can take this block where we are actually adding value to a particular element. So we can take that and plug it into our block here, sequence it, and then now it's going to give us, it's still asking us, what element do you want to change to? Okay. So what we are going to say is, here, remember, we want to modify the array. So we'll just say, take the test array. Now there is no issue with logic. It's making sense. We have taken a variable randomly. We just created a dummy variable and said we want to initiate it to 5 so that this 5, we want to change the variable of one of the variables in the array, whichever, doesn't matter. Now, suppose we want to change it to, because we want to make it 5, you got to let this box know that we need it to be changed. Or you want to add here. Okay, in this case, we are adding here, by the way. So we're just adding, okay? I'll just come to this here, just say list, and we put it here. And now I'm just going to say, let's see what it's done. Show me. So I can just read up the array now. So I'm just going to say, please show me the array and the element. Okay, so what it is effectively done now is it has added 5 to the last year. Okay, now we have to make sure that 5 is added. So I want to make sure that I get the index 2. Okay, now let's see what it does. There you go. So what it's done is we have taken 5. Oh, it's gone to 8. Just give me a second.
शोर मचाने से नहीं कुछ होगा, सिर्फ होठों को हिलाने से नहीं कुछ होगा, जिंदगी के लिए बेमौत हिम्मतें क्यों हो, पहले ही मांगो तो शैतान करते क्यों हो, सारे गम सारे गिले शिकवे भुला के उठो, दुश्मनी जो भी है आपस में भुला के उठो, अब अगर एक ना हो पाए तो मिट जाओगे खुश्क पत्तों की तरह तुम।
We've done the set list to 5. Just give me a second. We've initiated a list, test array at value list to end. That we've done correctly. Test array get value at let's make sure that it's giving me the right number. It's giving me an error, so let's take this out. Is okay. Let me just do a quick debug, but let's not waste time on this. Is supposed to give me 8. It's not giving me. Still giving me 6. Anyway, we'll just take this out.
मजीद शॉर्ट के लिए बयानात के लिए चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें और बेल आइकन को दबाएं। जज़ाकल्लाह। इतना माहौल खराब था यूरोप का एक जमाने में कि मैंने एक बयान में इसका तस्करा किया। मैंने एक अरब की किताब पढ़ी, उसने 150-200 साल पहले यूरोप के जो गंदगी के हालात थे वो बयान किए। उसने कहा कि उसने एक पुराना शादी कार्ड निकाल के लाया कहीं से, वो जैसे शादी कार्ड होता है ना उसमें मज़ामीन लिखे हुए होता है ना, तो कोई पुराना 100-150 साल पुराना का बरतानिया का उसको शादी कार्ड मिल गया। बरतानिया में रॉयल फैमिली का कि शहजादे की शादी थी, तो शादी कार्ड छपे थे और रॉयल फैमिलीज को उसमें दावत दी गई। तो उस शादी कार्ड पे जो हिदायत लिखी हुई थी, उस हिदायत का उसने अरबी में तर्जुमा किया।
Let me just quickly do a debug on this and see where we're going wrong. Just give me a second.
रॉयल फैमिली के जाहिर है, रॉयल फैमिली बीच हमारों को थोड़ी बुलाएगी बादशाह लोग हैं। तो जितने भी शुरका आएंगे उन तमाम मजीद शॉर्ट के लिए बयानात के लिए चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें और
Okay, there you go. So what it's done is, let me just get this. Why is list not coming to 5? Set value at 3 to list.
तुम्हारों को थोड़ी बुलाएंगे बादशाह लोग हैं। तो जितने भी शुरका आएंगे उन तमाम से गुजारिश है कि दस्तरखान से नाम साफ न करें। यानी बात ये सबूत है बाकायदा दस्तरखान से नाम साफ। दूसरी बात प्लेट में थूके नहीं, जो खाने का बर्तन है उसमें बलगम ना थूके। ये रॉयल फैमिली का हाल था और उसने लिखा है कि तुर्क खिलाफत में जो मुसलमानों का बादशाह था, तुर्कों का खिलाफत उस्मानिया थी, उस बादशाह के पास
Yeah, I'm not going to waste time on this, but let's just quickly get onto the. I'm not going to sit and debug this for a second now. Whatever reason it's not doing the right thing for me, we'll just quickly just get to the next example. What we're going to do is, so essentially, what we are trying to do here is we're trying to get to modify the array, and essentially we are trying to update it by showing that we can actually add different elements to an array and then manipulate it by simply using what do you call simple block sequences to modify. There, like I said, the simplest way of doing it is you can just get the array. Let me just get to the next example for you, which is where we are going to try and do some simple mathematics with the elements, and we can modify the things, the what do you call the array elements as well. So you can do simple mathematics here for this as well. So you can just go to, let's say we use the array command. We will just create a variable. So what we can do is create one. So let me just create and then call the assign the array, okay, for the element, and just call the let me just do the same thing. So let's see how it's going to fetch these. And then what I'm going to do is just go ahead and add these two elements, yeah, and then create a new one, and let's see what happens to that. So we can take two elements of our array and do some mathematics also with it. It's very simple. So we'll just do. So what I'm going to do is take elements and add these two elements, and
अमीन चगताई साहब आपके वालिद साहब हैं, ये मेरे वालिद साहब हैं, बड़ी मशहूर है ये दुकान। बाकी ऐसा ये सुना है तकरीबन 40 इयर्स हो गया आपको ये बिजनेस शुरू किए हुए। सुना है कि बड़े बड़े लोग आपसे आके ये आपके तोशे खास तौर पर लेने आते हैं और यहाँ से ले जाते हैं। वो हमारे चीफ मिनिस्टर हैं वज़ीर आला पंजाब उस्मान बुज़दार साहब, वो जब दरबार पे हासिल देने के लिए आते हैं वो हमसे मंगवाते हैं। आफ्ताब इकबाल साहब हमारे तोशे को बहुत ज़्यादा लाइक करते हैं। इसके अलावा और बहुत से सेलिब्रिटीज़ हैं जिसमें इमरान खान साहब हैं, वो भी हमारे पास आते थे, तोशा लेके जाते थे सुगात के तौर पर। तो ये पूरे पाकिस्तान में सब हमारे पास ही तैयार होते हैं। और इसका मतलब है कि गुलजार साहब को भी खास पसंद है ये, बहुत ज़्यादा पसंद है। जब भी वो विजिट करने के लिए आते हैं वो लेके
so basically I'm just going to add two elements from the 0 and 1, and let's see what the answer is going to be. So essentially I've taken these two elements. Let's see what the answer is coming as 4. So basically what you're doing is simple math. You can call elements of an array. We've called the two elements index 0, index 1, and all that I have done is I've added these two and declared. So in this process, you can understand that you can remember we did the example yesterday where we could calculate the average of the class. So it's nothing but it's a similar one extension to this where all that I would do is just 2 more steps. Okay, so before I do this, in that case, what I will do, right? I will just call, I'll do another average. Okay, there I will just take, going to take an example of these two elements. Okay, just as an example, I'm just not going to make it too tiresome for us. But what I'm going to do is, in this case, we will divide it by the length of the number of elements in the array. Okay, so that feature is also there for us. Okay, so it should not be complicated for us to take that example and while we're doing this, so that we are not wasting time. Okay, so we could, I'll just create one more variable called average. So if in our case, like yesterday, what we were doing, we just put in a loop. Remember, we just put it in a for loop. We calculated the total of the elements. So we can do that as well. Now. In fact, we might as well do that while we are at it. So I'll just show you that example where we can just quickly go and let's take a class. Let's assume that this is the score of the class. Okay, and let's create another array so that you are. So let's set this. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'll just create another call the we will call it the just waste time. Let's take the list. Okay. We will just create a class where we have, let's say, 3 students, and we'll give some value. So let's say it's coming to 45, 90 divided by 3. Let's say we should get an answer of 30 at least, right? That's the right answer. So what we're going to do is we are just going to be running this program by running it through a simple loop. Yesterday, if you remember, we used a function for this. Okay, so but instead of a function, if you use the same logic, I'm just going to show you the logic so that in this, what we have to do is iterate. We have to iterate until we have 3 elements. So obviously, we'll be using a for loop. So the moment you iterate from an array, you're going to use the for loop. So we'll just put a for loop quickly. Since it's a list, we're going to take a list. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the, let's say, from the for element, and we will assign. In this case, let's say we have to create a variable. We have not created one. We will create one, just say score of student. Will not waste time on this. So we will assign that score of student here for element score of student of the list. So essentially, what we are telling this is for this element of this array called list, each score is what we're going to iterate the number of times. Okay, of the list, whatever is the list, it has to exhaust. That's the condition. Okay, then all that we're going to do is we're going to add each of these, right? So very simple. What we can do is take this. Remember, I told you earlier that when you're using incremental addition, you can use this. So, and what are you changing? So you can just give it score of student. Okay. बेटियों की तरह पालते हैं और किसी भी किस्म का कोई फर्क नहीं करते। और ये जो दानियाल है, ये जनाब राजा साहब और मरीना का कॉम्बिनेशन है और इंतहाई क्यूट है। आपने भाभी को प्रपोज कैसे किया, मिले कहाँ पर और लव स्टोरी है क्या?
And the list will be obviously from our list. So it's going to take each element and count. Okay? And then all that we have to do outside of the loop, once it has given you the
इमेज ठीक किता ना दी नजरां च बिल्कुल है, देखो रिजल्ट ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ कैसा खूबसूरत इमेज ठीक किता है ना प्यारा राजा।
So once you count, you got to obviously count by
आपको एक दिलचस्प बात बताता चलूं कि मरीना जो है स्टिल क्रिश्चियन है और
you're looking at the array here. So one
मुसलमान
second.
है।
So
राजा साहब ने
let's
मरीना
look
को
at the
फोर्स
array
नहीं किया
here.
कि आप मुसलमान हो और इसी तरीके से मरीना ने राजा साहब को फोर्स नहीं किया कि आप ईसाई हो जाएं। तो लिहाजा ये दोनों अहले किताब हैं, शरीयत में भी इनका निकाह जायज है। लेकिन ये जो इनकी बेटी है, इसको इतनी मोहब्बत दी है राजा साहब ने, इतनी शफकत दी है, इसके सर पर दस्ते शफकत रखा है कि वो इंस्पायर्ड हुई है, कुरान शरीफ पढ़ती है, मुसलमान होने के करीब तर है। जब ये मुसलमान हो जाएंगी तो राजा साहब का कहना है कि इसके बाद मैं मरीना को भी मुसलमान कर लूंगा और बच्चा जो है, बच्चा तो राजा साहब का
Okay, so
कॉम्बिनेशन
we
है।
got that logic right there. And then all that we're going to do is going to set
दुनिया की लैंग्वेज और फोटो हारी मिक्स होगी तो पता नहीं कौन सी लैंग्वेज निकलेगी। लोग एक बेटी के साथ किसी को एक्सेप्ट नहीं करते। आपने इनको क्यों कर लिया? आप खुद भी यूके में 6 साल
now we could take the score and we got to calculate the average. Okay, we got to calculate the
बड़ी प्यारी इन्होंने बात की है कि इनको एक बाप का साया चाहिए था और इनको बेटी चाहिए थी। अल्लाह ताला ने इनको बेटी दे दी, उनको जो है बाप के रूप में राया साहब दे दिए। Marina, welcome to Pakistan. How do you feel while living in Pakistan?
Enjoying, excited, so nice.
How did you propose?
Like a friendly, like a good man, a good dad, perfect for me.
When did you meet him first time?
England in same house, and I met him in kitchen, like sharing kitchen. Like he started teaching me the English.
What he was doing in kitchen?
Making maths like always. Cooking
quickly do this
something.
once again. I think we got it right now. Let me just
No.
so we
Do you
can
know it?
No.
like yesterday what we did. I'm just going to show you. Fastest way to do this is we create a function and we create a function and we just call it, let's say
Car. Tura.
Marina, he goes to mosque for prayers. You go to churches for worship. There is no clash between you in this matter.
I'm not going to church. He's going to mosque. We
and
have to pray
we are
and
going to do
no
an array
problem between
and
us
then we are
about
done
religion
and
stuff.
then
No.
we'll just come here
Are you studying
and
Islam?
then
A
we'll
little bit.
include
I have
our
Quran
loop
and
for
Lithuanian
loop for
language
index
and
and
I
list
quite hard with the
and we'll just put
name.
it here
They
and
all
then
get
we'll
it
just say
the same
for
with me. It's need be help.
this
In
we're going to
future,
get
do you have
student
any plan to
of
become
list. This list we have to include it here and then we got to put the incremental add-on
How do you
which
like it?
is change in here. So change we're going to count by and basically we're going to add
राजा साहब की
store of
खूबसूरती है कि
student here
बीवी इनको बहुत
and so
लाइक
that
करती है
makes
और
it
मरीना ने तो लाइक
relevant.
किया तो इनसे शादी कर ली। लेकिन ये जो
Quickly
बड़ा खूबसूरत हमारा
just
दानियाल है, दानियाल को
give
कहीं
it
भी
the
प्यार से कभी भी डैनियल तो नहीं कह देती। नहीं जी दाढ़ी आ गई।
we're going to
कहना चाहो
calculate the
होना चाहो
average now
कुरान साढ़े
and
इमरान
here we're
जरा
going to
तकने पे मैं
calculate
स्क्रीन
the
पे तो
average
कुछ कह सकते
too. Essentially what we're going to do here is we're going to
जो फोटो हाल ही में इन्होंने मैसेज दिया है, मैं उम्मीद करता हूँ कि तमाम
add a
हमारे
variable
लोग जो
here
पेपर मैनेज करते हैं, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मैनेज करते हैं, उसके बाद
or we could
इनसे कुछ सबक हासिल करें।
we
इन्होंने
could do
इस
a math
बच्चे के
operator
साथ हाथ भी रखा।
divided
ये
by.
खूबसूरत सा दानियाल
So
भी हमें
we
तोहफे
just
में
do
दिया।
that.
जब लेस्बिनिया
So
और
here
पाकिस्तान
what we're
का
going to do
कॉम्बिनेशन
is
होता है,
calculate the
यहाँ
variable
बच्चे पैदा
we'll take
होते
the
हैं
count
और
because that's what we have taken the total here, the total of the
अपने मेहमान की
elemental
आदत जाने की इजाजत
array
दीजिए और देखते
and
रहिए डेली पाकिस्तान। अल्लाह हाफ़िज़।
and then we're going to do by the then we have the feature called the length of the array. Okay, this is the cool part because that's what we want here, the length of the array, and then we just put it in here. It should work. Okay, and by doing this, essentially what we've done is we've taken the total of the list, the elements of the list as a function, and we have divided it by the number of elements in the list. Okay, And what's it going to return? So it's going to return basically it's going to return the value called the average. Okay, so that's what it's going to call. So in our main code, that now that all that we have to do is we are not going to worry too much about all that we are going to do is call this function. Before calling this function, we need to declare, because our list has to have n number of items, right? So we need to declare what is that array. Okay, so just take it here. So first and foremost, before we do this, we're going to call the list. 3, say in our case, take it as 3 elements. Okay. Just give me a second. I don't know why this is giving me an error. Just give me a second. Essentially, what we are doing now is we are trying to call this function. I don't know why this is giving an error now, but we need to just try to decode. Yeah. So I got that right. So I think that was the error it was showing. So now it should show us the average of the number, right? So this is what essentially we are using arrays, and sometimes you got to just spend 2 seconds on debugging it. But from arrays perspective, this is how you could call. Like I said, the very useful example that we did yesterday, you could actually call. And I had another demo that I wanted to show you today that I wanted to build. This we finished sorting elements of an array in an ascending order. This is something that I wanted to show, but I think we're already overshot our time today unexpectedly. So we'll probably have to stop here and continue probably at a later session tomorrow. That will be day after, I guess. So we'll probably continue with the session day after. I have given you the feedback forms as well as the redeeming code. For all of you who are looking at and not understanding how to claim your certificate, there is a, like I said, education.microsoft.com. Please go there, okay? And like I said, go there and you may find yourself having trouble not understanding where to redeem it, right? So don't worry. There are two steps that you need to do. If I know the site correctly now, you need to go register yourself first and log in with an Outlook or a live ID, Microsoft ID that you have created. And then there is something called the Innovator Educator. Let me just quickly open it and see. It is the Microsoft. I think it's called the Microsoft. Give me a second. In education.microsoft.com. It's called the Microsoft Innovator program. Okay. So I don't know if you're able to see my screen now. Yeah, you are. So just quickly help you here. So let's go to programs, Microsoft Innovative Education. Educator program. Here you need to register yourself. Okay? Join the Innovative Education Center. And then you will be able to pretty much redeem your. So you can pretty much go here and join the Microsoft Education Center. Okay, you should be joining this Microsoft Innovative Educator program. Okay, and once you nominate yourself there, there are ways to redeem. Okay, your code. So what happens is there are certain courses that you're expected to take to start getting these certifications. But what happens is when I give you these redeeming codes, it is assumed that you have already taken a course. So it will automatically give you credit for that and throw out a certificate for you. Okay, please. You should not have trouble getting access to your uh, 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 certificate. Okay, and if you still continue to have challenges, I think tomorrow we have. I think the next section will ask probably Navdeep to spend about 10-15 minutes giving you explanation as to how to redeem your code. Okay, so that way I think it should not take much time for you to get access to these certificates and probably get involved in the Microsoft Innovator program as an educator, because there are a lot of goodies, like what I said in the beginning of these sessions. There are a lot of interesting stuff that you can get access to through Microsoft. And rest assured, if you for any reason you're unable to get access, I will work with Microsoft to do a separate session for you on this, so that we can walk you through and ensure that you're getting enrolled into the program. All right. So thank you all for a wonderful session today. I apologize, we had a lot of bugs today, and I think we could not actually go through the one exercise that we wanted to take. So let's hope that we have favorable time tomorrow or the next section to probably go through the missing example that I could not complete today, and we'll work forward with it. Okay, and I see, let me see if there are any questions that are need to be answered. Scan through.
Recording, please. Yes. Like I said, I put up the recording link in the chat window as well as the Q&A box, and I published it. Please download the videos. Yeah, you can see the videos. If one or two, I think one of them probably, since I forgot to hit live, probably it starts a little later, 15 minutes late. Don't worry about it. If required, I will take that session once again day after tomorrow for 15 minutes. Okay, and then that way you'll not have missed anything. So I'll try. Maybe what I'll do is, for the benefit of those who could not, and for that recording, since I forgot to hit live on that day, what I'm going to do is, and for I think for 10 minutes I was just talking, assuming that we were live, and then somebody called me and told me that I didn't hit the live button. So I had to quickly rerun the program, but I went through very quickly with it. I can probably do that, and so that you won't miss anything. Okay. Part A recordings, I'm sorry, I'm not the person for Part A, but I will request Navdeep to get the A recordings also. I'm told that they have already shared it with some people, in the sense some mails. I will try to get access to it, and I'll have Shika from my side write to all of you by latest by tomorrow, maybe. Yeah, I'll try to do that. And any other questions? Redeem coursework certificates I've given you. I've shared the older ones also. 13th, I don't have achievement code. See, from 11th to 13th, most of them I think seem to be about redeem codes only. No issue. So let's we'll have it again on the 20th, not tomorrow. I think the next session is scheduled for 20th. Okay, so 20th, what I could do is I could probably run through a couple more examples, and we'll try to do some live examples. And we'll probably work with arrays, and we'll try to do a couple more interesting scenarios. And otherwise, we'll run through some of the sessions that somebody has missed, but otherwise, by and large, we'll try to focus on. I think the topic is advanced sequencing, so we'll work on the similar topic. And after that, depending on what is required, if required, I think tomorrow on 20th session we'll talk a little bit about the educator program also. Yeah, so that for the benefit of all of you, I can always do that. Yeah. So thank you all. Monday we have the next session. Yeah. So we'll catch up with you guys on Monday then. Thank you all for joining the call. Look forward to catching up with you again. Yeah, on Monday. Monday, I think it's a little later, not at 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. It's 4 to 5. All right. Monday session is from 4 to 5. Thank you.